new paid family leave and other things. So, and if you have suggestions, we like to hear those too. And we're excited because we're going to have we're talking about having a new service animal update now that there's the citation piece of that. And we have information for you that's available on our website, and a new handbook that's also available for you free that's on our website too. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Oscar, and he's going to go through this exciting part for us.
Oh, thanks, Michelle.
If the pressure's on, Oscar, it's got to be exciting.
Oh, totally. Guaranteed, guaranteed. Okay, so anyway, Michelle will be available during and after the presentation if you have any questions that arise. So, okay, so welcome to the electronic reporting presentation of this OSHA 300 electronic record keeping training. This is a special presentation of the OSHA record keeping and reporting requirements for calendar year 2018, and it's sponsored by the Washington Food Industry Association, the Educational Foundation. Recognizing that these rules comprise the only significant change in the rules in the past 2 years, it's important that everyone know what these rules are and how they apply to your establishment. In this session, we'll review the record-keeping forms, the OSHA Forms 300, 300A, and 301, and that's the 301 or the approved substitute forms, and we'll talk about those in a few minutes. And then look at the reporting rule and the forms needed to get your summary data to federal OSHA. So we're going to start by looking at the federal OSHA rule and the changes that we'll need to comply with going forward. So this is the rule, this is the summary of the most recent adopted record-keeping rule, and it's identified by federal OSHA as their new final rule. And while it is not, in fact, the final rule, some of the important information to take from this slide is the compliance schedule and which documents will have to be reported. Now, as of July 30th of this past year, 2018, there's yet another rulemaking process underway at the federal level to further define and perhaps limit the effect of the adopted rule for certain employers. In the rule summary, OSHA is proposing to rescind the requirements for establishment with more than 250 employees to provide the information from record-keeping forms 300 and 301, or again, the other approved incident report forms, and then limit the submissions from all covered employers to just the information from the OSHA Form 300A summary. Now, the rule has not been implemented in the state of Washington yet. However, OSHA has indicated that they would accept voluntary submissions from employers in state plan states, and we are state of Washington is a state plan state, and we have not adopted the rule as of this time. So federal OSHA will not enforce the rule in states that haven't adopted the rule yet.
Hey, Oscar, I think
so
it's
what is
good
the final?
to mention
Go ahead,
that,
Michelle.
Yeah. So the state is working on adopting the rule. They're going to clone exactly what the federal rules are going to be at this time. But they anticipate the final rules to be at the end of this year or the first part of next year. And so when they do finally adopt all of the rules, we will have an additional webinar on that. So thanks, Oscar.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you. So these are the rules that were enacted in last year's record-keeping rule changes, and they remain in place today. So let me just quickly summarize those. The final rule revised OSHA's regulation on record-keeping and reporting occupational injuries and illnesses. This final rule requires certain, what they're referring to as covered employers, to electronically submit injury and illness data to OSHA that they are already required to keep under OSHA regulations. The content of these establishment-specific submissions depends on the size and industry of the employer. Now, in order to ensure the completeness and accuracy of injury and illness data collected by employers and reported to OSHA. The final rule also does, number one, requires employers to inform employees of their right to report work-related injuries and illnesses free from retaliation. Number two, clarifies the existing implicit requirement that an employer's procedure for reporting work-related injuries and illnesses must be reasonable and must not deter or discourage employees from reporting. And three, incorporates the existing statutory prohibition on retaliating against employees for reporting work-related injuries or illnesses. Okay, this post is located on the LNI, that's Labor and Industries website, that's the State of Washington website, Safety and Health page, and provides the latest information regarding the federal OSHA e-reporting rule as it applies to employers in the State of Washington. In an agreement between federal OSHA and the State of Washington, it was agreed that while the state will comply with all federal safety and health laws, the state will have a particular time frame to adopt these rules as part of the Washington Administrative Codes before they would be implemented in the state. With the e-reporting, or the electronic reporting rule that we're talking about here today, the state legislature has not adopted the rule. As noted, there are ongoing changes to the rule being considered by federal OSHA, and it's not likely that the state will complete their rulemaking process until the current federal rulemaking process in this regard is completed, and that's the information that Michelle just provided to us. Okay, as we just said, federal OSHA adopted changes to the record-keeping and reporting requirements that were to go into effect on January 1st, 2017, which is 2 years ago, for all federal OSHA plan states. The state of Washington is a state plan state, and we have an additional 6 months or whatever time we need in which to adopt the rules and put them into effect. Now let me explain how that is impacting the reporting deadlines and requirements. January 1st, 2017 was to have been the start of the revised reporting requirements for the nation. In the state of Washington, the OSHA states activities mandated measures. Now this is an acronym. You won't necessarily need to remember this, but the acronym is SAM, S-A-M-M. So if you ever hear that, you'll know that the rules that are being considered, and these would be federal rules that are being considered by this Washington state legislature, have this SAM allowance, that is the state's activities mandated measures allowance, which provides an additional 6 months after adoption of federal rules for the state to adopt those rules, or as soon as the legislature can get those rules in place. And this, again, allows states with the OSHA-approved occupational safety and health programs an additional 6 months to review, adopt, and implement any required changes from the federal OSHA Act. That's the Federal Occupational Safety and Health Act, beyond their compliance deadline of July 1st, 2017. In June of 2017, federal OSHA filed another proposed delay of compliance date rule in the Federal Register to extend the compliance deadline from July 1st, 2017 to December 1st, 2017. The purpose of the delay was to provide the new administration an opportunity to review the new electronic reporting requirements prior to their implementation and allow affected entities sufficient time to familiarize themselves with the electronic reporting system, which was not going to be available at that point until August 1st. Again, of 2017. In addition to delaying implementation at the federal level, the rule would not go into effect in the state of Washington until the 2018 state legislature adopted the federal OSHA rule. And again, it's what Michelle just advised us, that it's not in place at this point. So until the new rule takes effect in the state of Washington, we continue to operate under the existing old rules. Our word to the wise here is always make sure that you are keeping accurate injury, illness, your accident injury records on your OSHA Form 300. That's your 300 log of workplace-related injuries and illnesses for accurate reporting and converting to your Form 300A. Also ensure that you continue to comply with the Form 300A posting requirement from February 1st through April 30th every year. Now, in a minute, we'll discuss additional information that you'll need once the new rules are in place, especially if you're an employer with more than 250 employees at any one location. Okay, the question, does the rule require employers no. The new requirement does not add to or change an employer's obligation to complete, retain, and certify injury and illness records. It only requires certain employers to electronically submit some of the information from these records to federal OSHA. Okay, so who must submit the information? All right, let's start out with establishments with 250 or more employees that are subject to OSHA's record-keeping regulation must electronically submit to OSHA some of the information from the log of work-related injuries and illnesses. That's that form, OSHA Form 300. The summary of work-related injuries and illnesses. And then OSHA Form 300A, well, the summary of work-related injuries and illnesses is the OSHA Form 300A, and the Injury and Illness Incident Report Form, which is OSHA Form 300 or an equivalent approved form. And in the state of Washington, there are a number of forms that have been approved. Within the client base that we work with, we use, many of our employers use what's called the FA1, which has been approved by L&I. There's also a state employee incident report form that can be used. So establishments with 20 to 249 employers in certain high-risk industries must electronically submit to OSHA some of the information from the summary of work-related injury and illnesses, and that, again, that OSHA Form 300A. That's the summary Form 300A. These industries include all employers in agriculture, utilities, construction, manufacturing, department stores, and nursing homes. Establishments with fewer than 20 employees, and that's 20 employees at all times during the year, must continue complying with the record-keeping and summary report posting requirements as before, but will only have to comply with the electronic submission requirements upon written notification from either federal OSHA or from the OSHA arms, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, or what we call the BLS survey forms. Now, here's a reminder. If your company had a total of 10 or fewer employees at all times during the last calendar year, you do not need to keep injury and illness records unless DOSH, OSHA, or the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that's BLS, informs you in writing that you must keep records under this section. However, as required in the Washington Administrative Codes, all employers covered by WSHA must report any work-related incident that results in a fatality, inpatient hospitalization, amputation, or the loss of an eye. Now, the partial exemption for size is based on the number of employees in the entire company. And to determine if you're exempt because of size, you need to determine your company's peak employment during the last calendar year. If you had no more than 10 total employees at any time in the past calendar years, your company qualifies for the partial exemption for size. Okay, how should the data be submitted? OSHA will provide a secure website for the electronic submission of information, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. The website will include web forms for direct data entry and instructions for other means of submission, such as file uploads. For establishments with 20 to 249 employees that are required to report using the federal OSHA forms, it's estimated that it will take a typical employer about 10 minutes to create an account and another 10 minutes to enter the required information from the summary of work-related injuries and illnesses, and that's from your Form 300A. Now, for establishments with 250 employees, and this is all based on what is in place in the rules right now. If the rule considerations that are the rules that are being considered by federal OSHA at this time go through, then that will preempt what I'm going to talk about right now. But for our purposes at this time, for establishments with 250 or more employees, depending on the outcome of the current rulemaking process, OSHA estimates it will take a typical employer about 10 minutes to create an account, 10 minutes to enter the required information from the summary of work-related injuries and illnesses, that's your Form 300A, and 12 minutes to enter the required information for each injury or illness recorded on their log on their Form 300 and 301 or approved incident report form. So we're going to be in a waiting stance for a while we wait to see what federal OSHA does. But in the meantime, the state of Washington, as Michelle indicated, will be adopting the rule as is in place at this time and with federal OSHA, and that will require some additional work on the part of the larger employers, that is, employers with 250 employees or more. So now, any establishments, all establishments must submit the information electronically and may not submit the information on paper. Employers who do not have the necessary equipment or internet connection may submit their data from a public facility such as a library. OSHA also intends to provide an interface for entering data from a mobile device, and again, we'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. So let's start out with a quick look at the various forms that we'll be discussing in the next few minutes. So I'm going to start with the OSHA Form 301 for injury and illness incident reporting. Now, this form is generally not in use in the state of Washington, and employers have the option of using a state form or other state-approved form that provides all the information that the 301 form provides. Within the business associations and employers that we work at, as I indicated a few minutes ago, you're most likely using a form called the FA1. To help demonstrate the electronic reporting process, I've created this mock incident report using the FA1 form to help explain the ensuing OSHA record-keeping training. This is our preferred form for working with the workers' comp retro program, and it provides all the information needed to report and to manage the employee injury illness claim. The importance of this form can't be overstated, and every supervisor, manager, executive, anyone with managerial responsibilities for employees needs to be very familiar with the form and should have the training needed to do the injury illness investigation that will provide a complete, comprehensive report of the incident. As of today, if you're a large covered employer that is with more than 250 employees at any given location, you're required to include the 301 or substitute form in your electronic reporting to federal OSHA. For all employers with fewer than 249 employers at their location, the completed form per se is not required to be electronically submitted to OSHA, but will be very important in protecting the rights of both the employee and the employer. Recall from a prior slide that I advised that federal OSHA is involved in another rulemaking process that will eliminate the reporting of this form or any approved substitute form in the future. Okay, OSHA's Form 300 log is the most important form you'll need to maintain in order to comply with the OSHA record-keeping rules, including the electronic reporting requirements. This form does not get reported, but it will provide all the information needed on the 300A summary form that does get reported. Make sure you've covered or you've completed all the blanks and that you transpose the information and numbers accurately to the OSHA Form 300A for submittal to federal OSHA. Some guidelines for completing this form. Okay, so let's just start out at the, at the top. Enter the year. You know, it's up in the upper right-hand corner. We just entered the year 2018 that you're going to be reporting for. Next thing, and again, this is just a mock report here that I've developed for purposes of the webinar. So you add the name of the establishment, not the corporate name, unless they are one and the same, and then add the city and state that the establishment is located in, and then getting into the form itself, beginning with the case number identifier. Well, you can enter any case number you wish. Most companies simply use a numerical progression starting with number 1. Just make sure you follow suit with the subsequent case numbers, entering the information as the incidents become known to the company. Remember, this is your reference document, and it's not going to be made available to the public or anyone outside of the business. Now, a safety compliance inspector may ask to see this during an inspection, but they are prohibited from disclosing this information also. And you'll notice here there is no injury or time loss or days away from work. This should be recorded on the, well, let me just go through here and just filling in some of the blanks here, just making sure, again, that everything gets filled in as needed. So, and again, this is all just a mock reporting, but just to indicate all of these blanks need to be filled in, okay? All across. So that there is, you'll notice here, again, that there's no injury or illness or time loss on that, on number 2. This would simply be recorded on the 300 log as an incident only, and would not be counted as an injury when you're adding up the columns for moving the information to the summary form 300A. So complete each case number's information as the information becomes available. And this form, you can continue to change this form throughout the year as you need to, as new information becomes available from the medical provider or through workers' comp. Again, finally, when it's all said and done, you're going to add the columns and move the results to the summary form 300 for reporting to OSHA. So let's go ahead. Okay, when you've transferred, when you start to transfer all the information from the form to fill in the blanks here, this form gets posted from February 1st through April 30th in the area where it's available to the entire staff, and second, gets electronically submitted to federal OSHA to comply with their electronic requiring or tracking requirement. So here, if you need help locating your NAICS number, and it used to be that we used the SIC, that Standard Industrial Classification Code, but everybody, the state, the feds are all moving toward this North American Industrial Classification System, the NAICS code. So if you don't know where to get that, where to find that code number, feel free to call Ern West, call me, call your loss control manager. We'll locate it for you. You can also look on your business license usually to find it. So from this point, we're going to, I'm going to finish taking a look here at the numbers. And again, what we've done now, we've taken the form, we've taken the numbers here, number of cases, total number of days. We've added up the columns from that OSHA form 300. And we've moved them over here into the 300A form. So at this point, when you are satisfied that all the numbers are correct, that you're ready to go, then have the document signed, and it has to be signed by an executive of the country. This is or company. This has to be signed by an executive. It can't be signed by an administrative assistant or a safety committee chair or somebody at that level. This needs to be signed by somebody with some authority. Okay, so here we go. This is where we start with the new electronic reporting. Everything up to this point has just been keeping the rules, keeping the forms that you all should be used to, the 300, the 300A, and your 301 or approved substitute form. But from this point forward now, we're going to talk about the electronic reporting and how you're going to go about doing this. And I just want to caveat all of this to say this is, this may seem like it's a complex, more complex than it really is. But what's really important here is that you just get started off on the right foot. And of course, the first thing you're going to do is what I recommend. The first thing is get Google and OSHA record keeping. Or put OSHA record keeping on the Google line, and we're going to take a look for one of the OSHA record keeping sites. And in this case, you want to make sure that the site you're going to is an OSHA site. There are many other companies that will want to charge you for developing the information. They'll have other forms. They'll have some forms that you can use to get all of this ready to go in anticipation of sending off your 300A. But I recommend the easiest, cleanest way to do this is just go right to the OSHA, OSHA.gov record keeping sites or injury reporting sites, like I've indicated here. Find one of these sites, and then let's just open up one of them and let's see where we're going to go. Okay, so now from either of the two web pages that we just followed, you'll note the reference in both to the Launch ITA page. And ITA is the injury tracking application. And that's the link that will get you to the page that you need to be on the right. You'll see the Launch ITA when you click on the ITA launch page on either one of those two websites. It's going to take you to this page, which is going to say Launch ITA, and that's the link you'll use to get to the injury tracking application. Again, read the instructions. It's from this Launch ITA site that you'll find all the forms that need to be completed in order to comply with the record keeping rule. Okay, now when you've launched the ITA application, this is the first page you'll be introduced to. In order to be able to provide federal OSHA with your Form 300A summary data, you'll need to first create your account, okay, so that OSHA will know who you are, and second, so that they know where your information is coming from, you'll be creating an establishment for them. After you've created your account, for future record-keeping submittals to OSHA, unless you have to edit your account information, you'll be directed to log into our account and go directly to your establishment. Because this is our first time into the system, we're going to create an account, okay? So we're going to create a mock report here so that we can get through all the necessary forms. So you want to make sure that you carefully read and complete each of the fields on the form. If you have inconsistencies on the pages going forward, when you do ultimately try to submit, you'll likely get an error message and you'll have to dig back through the documents to determine where the error resides. Follow the instructions and don't get ahead of yourself. Make sure you provided the information needed before going to the next page. You'll you'll have a couple of opportunities to edit the documents before sending them. And then make sure that you let OSHA know you're not a robot, and then click to continue. Okay, for create account, step 2 of 3, terms and conditions, you want to check the box to acknowledge that you have read and accept the terms and terms of use agreement. In order to complete the account creation process, when you click on continue, OSHA will receive your account information, and the ITA automatically emails the end user, and that's you, a notification that contains a hyperlink to log in and set your permanent password. As always, make sure you store this information in a secure place, as it will be needed in the future to access your account information and provide future data reporting from the establishment you've created here to OSHA. Okay, so you will now receive an emailed instruction from the ITA. Again, remember that's the injury tracking application. So ITA, you'll hear that all the time. So once create account step 3 of 3, confirm account creation page opens. Now you'll see that up there toward the top. Once that page displays, carefully read the instructions, and then click on the hyperlink in the emailed notification to log in and set a password. Note, this hyperlink will expire after 24 hours. The message will provide you with a one-time user password for you to use to establish your permanent password. And again, I can't emphasize enough, make sure you follow the instructions and don't get ahead of yourself. Okay, we now have an account created so that OSHA knows who's out there and who will be submitting data. So now we're going to log in to make sure that you're using the information received back from OSHA. So as noted on the slide, make sure that information is stored where you can retrieve it in the future. Click on the login button, and it will take you to the next page. Now you get to create another document. This time it will be the establishment that you'll be reporting for. You're going to concentrate on the manual data entry, as that's where the greatest percentage of us are going to be working from. There is a corporate option that allows for entering batch data into the system, and we can go through that individually with anyone that wants to give me a call. It's a little bit more complex, and I don't want to confuse people with that at this time. So let's get to the first step here, which is creating the establishment. Okay, so this is where you begin to transfer information from your OSHA 300 and 300A forms.
Hey, Oscar.
Okay, so go ahead, Michelle.
You create multiple establishments under one login. So many of our stores that have that reach up to that number of employees, they have multiple stores. You know, they may have. I'm just going to pick on Leprechaun, just because we were talking with her earlier. They have multiple locations. You know, 5 or 6 stores.
Sure.
Does each of those stores have to be an individual login, or can she or he have one master one and then report for each of the stores? Okay,
each from a corporate perspective, they can create a single account. Okay, and the way that is the way that's handled in the rule, and I just, you know, interestingly, I had this same question from a client in the prior webinar. And what the feds say is what the question was: may a firm with multiple establishments make a single submission of the data from the multiple establishments? And the answer was yes. A firm with more than one establishment may submit establishment-specific data for multiple establishments. To do this, the firm will create what they're calling registration, which is in fact an account. They'll create one account and then follow the directions provided to submit data for multiple establishments. But what they have to remember is that the purpose of all of this is to create an information base for individual locations. So while they only will have a single account, they still have to create the establishment log for each one of the businesses that are under that account. So while you've got, store, corporate store, and now you've got store A, store B, store C, store D, and so on, and each of those will have to have their own establishment created.
Have you had any feedback from anybody that's actually tried to do this, or the testing people that from OSHA, if they found just to number the stores easier, or did they actually have different names that made it easier, or both, a combination?
And I have not. I've not personally had any experience with that. And again, when people have called me, what I tell them is, don't worry about it at this time, because the feds are in the rulemaking process, and they haven't completed the adoption of this rule yet for the state of Washington. The state of Washington hasn't adopted the rule yet, so we're not subject to that. And I get a sigh of relief always from people say, okay, but it is to say that it is going to happen. It's like, it's kind of the inevitable. Whatever is in the works is going to happen, and we just, we're trying to get out ahead of the game. I've not heard from any of our like Metropolitan Market or anybody like that has multiple stores at this point. I'm hoping that as we get through this, they'll understand that it's relatively easy once they create the account, and then just have to go through and create the establishment for each one of the facilities that they're going to be submitting information for.
Thanks, Oscar.
Does that help?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We want to make sure we can clarify as much as
right.
possible, as much as mud as possible. Clarify, right?
Here. Okay, so we're going to go ahead here, and you've already input some of this information on earlier forms, and this provides you another opportunity to recheck your information to make sure it's correct and what you want to report. So when you're looking at your injury and illness rate, this is where you have to go off the grid to do a little of your own math. So let me just work on this real quick here. Let me back up. I got ahead of myself here. Again, these are, you want to make sure that as you start the creation of you're creating an establishment form here. And again, remember that this is the location for each. This establishment form is the location for each of your individual facilities that will be reporting their separate OSHA 300A information to federal OSHA. So you want to make sure that you fill in the number of employees. You want to make sure to tell them that you are a private, your private sector, that you're not government. And then once you have got this information in place, then it's just a simple click on save, and it will move you to your view establishment page. Now, and again, we've already put some of this information in, and this provides you with your first opportunity to recheck your information to make sure it's correct and it's what you want to report. So this gives you, again, it's the opportunity to edit the details here. When you're looking at your injury and illness rates, and again, we're going to go off the grid here in just a minute, and we're going to talk about these down the lower left-hand side, some of the TCIR rate and the DART rate, and we'll talk about those. But first of all, or most importantly, again, the edit piece right here. This allows you to be able to go through, take a look at the information, and again, remember that if this comes up as an error when you submit it, it's going to be up to you to go back and sort through all of the forms, view the establishment, view the create the account and so on, to make sure that you input the correct information for your location. Okay, so first let's calculate your total incident rate. And this is just add together the total number of injury and illness cases from the year. And again, this is going to come from your OSHA 300A form now. Multiply that number times 200,000. 200,000 is the base number equivalent to total hours worked by 100 full-time equivalent employees for a year. And then divide by the total hours worked by the establishment for the entire reporting year. That includes management, temporary, and leased workers. Now, more often than not, you can retrieve your total reported hours worked from your workers' comp files. Now, you'll also be calculating the DART rate, and this is your days away and restricted time rate. This requires you to add up your totals from your OSHA 300 form, your columns H and I, days away, job transfer restrictions, and again, multiply that number by 200,000. Again, I repeat that same information. This is the equivalent of the total hours worked by 100 full-time employees, 50 weeks, 40 hours a week. Okay, and again, this is for establishment for the reporting year, including management, temporary, and leased workers. And temporary and leased workers, for those who are going to be for people that are under your direct supervision. When you've calculated your total case incident rates and your DART days away, you'll click on the Add 300A Summary. Okay, we're getting down to the wire here. Okay, the form you'll be completing to transmit to federal OSHA will look a little bit different when completed. The form on the right is the document we filled in earlier and is not the form that OSHA will accept for compliance with the rule. You can't just send this form in because their computers have no way of reading this form unless you input the data over onto their form where we have the Add 300A Summary indication at the top. Again, the document on the left will have all the same information available, but in a slightly different format. And remember, you won't be able to simply attach your existing 300A summary form to your OSHA electronic transmittal form. You'll need to input the actual data from your 300 summary sheet to the electronic reporting version. Now, once you've successfully completed the form, click the Final Save button. Okay, so you've got all of this information transferred. When you're all done, hit the Save button, and you'll have the final opportunity now to review and edit any of the materials. Look the form over carefully, and if you're satisfied that you've provided your best effort, click on the command to submit your data, and it will be transmitted to the federal OSHA web address. If you've successfully completed all the requisite information, federal OSHA will send you a confirmation email message, and you'll be done with your OSHA record keeping for another year. Congratulations. We're done. So here's the reference pieces. And again, you can start out looking at that OSHA.gov injury illness reporting or the OSHA.gov record keeping, and that's where you want to start, and that will get you into all this other getting started in the ITA, setting up your account, creating an establishment, add your 300, all of this. So, and again, I can't I can't overstate the caution of carefully inputting the information, making sure you follow the instructions, don't get ahead of yourself when doing this, and you shouldn't have any issues with it. So thanks for your attentiveness. We appreciate your time.
If anybody has any questions, you're able to chat in the chat box, or you can raise your hand, and we'll be glad to unmute you. But this slide and presentation is attached to this webinar, but it will also be posted on our website. And if you have additional questions later on, you can always contact us afterwards, and we'd be happy to answer your questions for you. But I think the fabulous Oscar has helped us through the thick of it, and as the rules finalized, we'll be able to make it a little bit more clearer for you. So I am waiting for, see if there's any other questions here. It doesn't look like we have any additional questions. So on behalf of the Washington Food Industry Association Educational Foundation, I would like to thank all of you for joining us, and thanking Oscar from Earn West for doing his fabulous presentation. And we're going to end it now. Thanks, Oscar. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Michelle, and thanks, everybody.
Have a great week.